This video focuses on question number 4, which is a question that gives you the opportunity to reflect on one or more policy issues and how they relate to ideas about democracy. Now note that in the syllabus, the articles were assigned in a way that connects them to a particular idea about democracy. And I will also note that you may, of course, refer to any of these policy-oriented articles in your answers to any of the other questions. So question 4 says, ideas about democracy and democratic processes underpin the policies created by political decision makers at all levels of government. Discuss the influence of democratic models and theories on policies. Your answer may include discussion of decision-making processes or an actual policy. Include reference to at least one article assigned in the course syllabus. So at least means you can use more than one article. So for example, that you could look at Massey's article on the public sector, Hendricks' article on transition management, Robertson and Dale on education policy, Larner on neoliberalism, Abdullah on public policy making, Mettler and Sauce on public policy for democratic citizenship, Barriger on macroeconomic policy, Ugins on immigration, or another article that's listed in the syllabus. Now, Dorian Massey was one of the first articles we read in the term, and she focuses on how the language we use impacts the way we see and interact with the world around us. And she argues that the language we use has effects in molding identities and characterizing social relationships. And it's crucial to the formation of the ideological scaffolding or the building of hegemonic common sense. So those things that we take for granted. And so she's arguing that discourse matters. So when we use the language we use shapes the ideas we have shapes the language we use and so on. But when it becomes something becomes embedded in language, it becomes normalized. And so she talks about the idea of the idea that many of our relationships, whether it's about us as passengers, as readers, as patients, or as students, have been erased by this new general relationship of buying and selling. And this relationship of buying and selling, this relationship as a consumer, or this consumer model, is given precedence over everything else. In other words, we've become characterized as customers above everything else, no matter what area of society we're interacting in. And this article is interesting because so much of the way we talk about things like healthcare and education is these days using a consumerist model. And so Massey examines the shifting nature of what the term public means today. So in terms of the public worker, the public servant, or the public sector, starting with evidence from the 1950s when the use of the term public was something to be respected. If you were a public worker, you were seen as a reliable worker. Since then, there's been this gradual denigration of the idea of the public, so that now the public sector workers are not as well respected as they used to be. Another article that we talked about was this one on conscientious objectors. So we've talked a few times about the question of civil disobedience, and I know some of you wrote your essays on this. Now, this wasn't really an article; it was a blog post, and it was a reflection by one person who was forced to rethink his position on Israel's conscientious objectors. You'll remember that in Israel, all young adults must serve some time in the military, which means they're involved in the occupation of Palestinian territory. And so this article raises questions about the rights and responsibilities of citizens to stand up for their moral and ethical beliefs. And as I said in class, I assigned this article in an effort to provoke you to start thinking about what would make you protest. Now, the remaining questions are drawn from the specific chapters of the textbook. So these questions are intended to allow you to delve more deeply into one specific model or philosopher and their ideas. And you may also integrate knowledge from other chapters or articles. Now, you'll remember this graphic from the textbook, where Held uses this graphic to illustrate the variance of democracy and the challenges in thinking about democracy. And I'll continue this thinking about these different models in the next video.